Welcome back to the Mold Show. On this episode, we continue our discussion with Andrea Hembroff and her incredible journey with dealing with mold exposure, how it affected her health, her relationships, really every aspect of her life, and ultimately her career path. You're not going to want to miss this one. And if you've missed the first half, make sure you check it out.
You just brought up relationship with your spouse, so you kind of opened the door for me to ask this question that we had sent to us over the weekend. It's a good one because we experience it. I don't want to say on a daily basis, but on a pretty routine basis. And it sounds like you and your husband have a really good relationship. I'm sure it caused quite a bit of tension over what you all have gone through. But the question that was sent to us was, what do you do when your spouse won't listen to you about the mold in your house? Which I'm guessing that means they're having some health issues because of it, if she's sending it our way. But you have any advice, Andy, given what you all have experienced?
I do. I see this so often. I've seen a lot of marriage discord, and this is kind of my specialty. It is not uncommon for the husband to be unaffected, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Don't quote me on this because I can't explain it. It's just something I read in passing, but something about testosterone levels help downregulate autoimmunity, men detox better. You guys have it so easy. Women have sometimes.
It's women. Adam says this all the time. It's more bro science on our end, but it is something that we observe with every household that we help, and it is usually the woman in the household that is affected. We do have situations where it was the man or the husband that was mostly affected, but the overarching theme is definitely the female.
Yeah.
Yes. And same, I talk to a lot of people, really a lot of people. And I will tell you that I very rarely come in contact with a family that they were all affected the same. And also it was me and my daughter that are most affected. She was the one with lead poisoning, and she's kind of my genetic twin, but my kids, all three of them had eczema, which I thought was genetic. And then, after we remediated, things just kind of fell away. And so things that we didn't connect were like, oh, okay, that's mold. And so sometimes husbands are affected. They just aren't aware of it. But, women were usually, I work from home and I work full time. But when I wasn't, I was working part-time, taking care of the kids. I'm in the house a lot more than my husband. I'm the one doing the cleaning. So guess what? I'm on the floor, I'm scrubbing, all that dust is getting to me. Underlying conditions there's so many factors. You've got a genetic predisposition, Lyme disease, autoimmune disorder. So those underlying conditions, past exposures. So not uncommon. I would love to have a conversation with this woman's husband, because it's just because he's not affected doesn't mean that it doesn't affect him. But I'd like to answer this question by telling you guys a quick story. I was working with a woman who became a friend a couple years ago, super sick, really, really sick, and unable to get out of bed a lot of times. She had a son, really sweet husband, and husband not affected, not sick, and he was the sole provider. And she was so sick, and there was mold in that house. And recently I found out that her husband developed a very sudden and aggressive autoimmune disorder that affected his lungs, and he is no longer with us.
Wow.
And so what I would say to these people is, great, you're not affected. Cool. These are toxins. And us women, oftentimes our bucket gets filled faster. And once that bucket is overflowing, that's illness. And I suspect the past owner, and again, I don't know this, but this is what my heart tells me. The past owner of my house was not hypersensitive, but she died of liver and lung cancer at 56. So these are things that are very real. They're very tangible. This is not woo-woo science. Dealing with non-believing spouses can be really difficult. And I've had conversations with husbands where I was like, oh, he's got it. I explained it. He's got it. And then he doesn't. I don't have a good answer for that other than to, continue to share resources with him. And try to steer clear of the fear mongering and but really solid resources, but it's not uncommon. And so,
Andy, I think I shared with you when we did our, we had a phone conversation. I think it's been a couple weeks now. I can't remember when we talked, but Al does an awesome job of talking with both spouses. We've had so many uncomfortable situations at the property that it came to a point where we said, we can't do this anymore. It causes too much stress on us. It causes too much stress on the homeowners. We need them both to be on the same page before we even go out there. So if he doesn't talk to both spouses together, they don't understand what our role is in this and how we can help them. It usually helps tremendously, at least open the door to acceptance that this could possibly be something. And as we get into the house and do our inspection and we start to find things, typically they become more of a believer than they did before, because the data speaks for itself.
Amen. And I agree. You have to have, getting your spouse on board is so important because you're making those financial decisions together. And so oftentimes I've seen husbands like, I'm handy, I'm going to do it myself. And my husband he is, I have a unicorn of a husband. I won the lottery there, but he attempted our first remediation and he really went in lengths to set containment. But we just didn't get it. We didn't understand. So I got out of the house for the day and he ripped out the basement under containment, no negative air pressure, nothing else. We were just removing it again, because we did not understand.
Sure.
I can't explain how this happened, and it's still bizarre to me. But after I came home from the house, I walked like I had cerebral palsy for like 2 days. Super bizarre. And now I look back and I'm pretty confident I was having seizures. I was really, really, really unwell. During one of the remediations that he did, I experienced like psychosis. Very scary. Mold exposure causes suicide ideation in a lot of people, and that's what it does for me, which is really bizarre. It's really, really bizarre. But my husband learned, he's a great remediator now. He's a chef by trade, but he has learned to be a good remediator because he's watched me spiral the drain, and then he's watched me come back to life. So what I would say to these husbands that aren't believers, because my husband would never admit it, but I think at some point he thought I was crazy, but he's a good guy. He'll support me in anything, but now he doesn't. I think he's more of an advocate than I am sometimes because he's seen it. He has seen me lose everything that I was. I wish that I wish you guys could see who I was in my sickest days. And he saw me come back to life. So these husbands that don't believe, eventually they do become believers, but then it's too late. And a lot of times it's because they're hopeless. They don't have the support of their spouse. They don't have the resources. They're very sick, or divorce happens. And it doesn't need to be like that. Navigating these illnesses, it doesn't have to bankrupt you, and it doesn't have to be hopeless. There is a pragmatic, realistic approach forward. And so
I am glad you bring that up, because the social isolation aspect of this, so many people that we work with just feel so helpless. Yeah. Nobody believes them. Even the people that are closest to them that they've known their whole lives, don't believe what they're going through. And that isolation is real. I don't know how any other way to say it. So it's such a topic that nobody likes to talk about either. And I just feel like if we did talk about it, it could help so many people.
Yeah, I've had clients where I'll share the job photos with them, through the process, all the gory details, and you would think they'd be horrified, and in some cases they feel vindicated.
You can literally see the weight being lifted off their shoulders.
Right, and it's like, I didn't go through all this for nothing. I it's in a weird way, it's relief to know that, hey, it was there all the time. I'm not crazy. All those types of things I've heard on numerous times. So yeah, man, maybe Sean, we have episodes where we have the husbands come on, the non-believers. We'll do a non-believer episode. You send your husband to us, and we'll just,
Oh my God. Can we
you can be on the panel. You can be on the panel. Yeah.
Well,
But you're right. You're right, though. The validation, it's crazy how many people want us to find something when we show up to a house.
Yeah. Oh, hands down.
They want us to find something, and it's you would think it'd be the complete opposite, but they want that validation that there's something going on with their house.
Well, they want that validation, and some of these illnesses are so complex. And I was 37, and I mean, I've always been active. I mean, I used to race motocross and snowboard and run 5 miles a day, and then I couldn't get out of bed or think. And so it's just so tangible. So again, a lot of times when my clients have a mold inspection, I pray that they find something and that it's, reasonable to address. And the isolation is very real. And that's why I do what I do. This job is not glamorous. It's not super fun, but I experience, and even me. So I've made a career out of this, obviously, and I'm educating doctors literally all over the world. Mm-hmm. And I have the science to show it. And my family went poof. I haven't seen or talked to my family in 5 years. And that was not, when we were living in the tent, nobody, and I don't know why. I was probably out of my mind, but they didn't think it was important enough to call and be like, "Are you guys okay?" And that's not uncommon. So we have to break these stigmas. And my hope is that in the very near future, when somebody says we have mold in our house, we're mold sick, the community, the families rally. They start fundraisers, and they start meal trains, because it's, when people say, well, I have Lyme and mold, well, that's weird, good luck. But when people are like, well, we had a house fire, it's like the community rallies, and they should, but it's like, it's covered by homeowners insurance. It's just, I'm not trying to discredit that. It's just, these things are so monumental to attack, right, financially and emotionally. And the isolation is just like a cherry on top of the crap storm that it is. So,
well, you make a good point. From the perspective of getting help, unless you're willing to fund it on your own, you're unlikely to get anything from anyone. Insurance company, if they cover anything, it's going to be isolated to a specific event and limited to a certain dollar amount. And in most cases, that's scratches the surface for a lot of things, especially if you're going to go to the extreme of even thinking about getting rid of some of your belongings and attacking, HVAC systems and things like that. So yeah,
but that's a good topic. We should touch on the content issue, because that is such a financial suck. And the first couple, so we've remediated our house. We've probably done 7 different remediations. And mind you, first of all, it's because I didn't understand, looking at the whole house, getting a good diagnosis of the whole house, because air moves. So, mm-hmm, you want to look at the whole house. Mm-hmm. But also we were just uncovering things. But the first 2 times I got rid of most of what we owned. And then after the 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I was like, I'm just going to clean it. You want to be really careful with your content. So my advice to be with anybody that's starting this process, the first thing that you should do, go through your contents, purge. If it doesn't bring joy, if it's not valuable, if it's not sentimental, get rid of it. Because every content that you have, you're going to have to consider. And man, I'll tell you what, you don't realize how much crap you have until you're dealing with some of these things. You have to think all this stuff in your house, it's more surface area, more dust to land on. And when we went through this, I went through every item in our house. Every piece of silverware. Mycotoxins are not just going to magically infiltrate things. If it's non-porous, clean it. I don't use anything special. I'm a big fan of microfibers. I go to Costco. I go to the automotive section. I'm always, small particulate cleaning is just another Tuesday to me. So I'm always cleaning, but be cognizant of what you're spending the money on replacing. Beds, do it. We replaced all the kids' mattresses. We didn't replace ours because we were tapped out, and we finally did. And I'm pretty sure my mattress was contaminated because as soon as we replaced it, I felt better. But don't buy into you have to leave everything behind, because you're going to run out of resources really quick, and then things get interesting. I hope you're a reader if you run out of resources, because that's
Yeah, the primary objective should be to direct those funds towards the water damage source areas, the source areas of contamination, for sure.
But and also invest in your air quality. We've put gutters up. We did some regrading. We put in a big high powered dehumidifier. We put in a whole home air purifier. We're saving our pennies for an air exchanger, because we don't have an air exchanger that's for good ventilation. So there's a lot of ways that you can invest in your air quality. And so put your resources there and make your home the best that it can be, rather than, over testing your home or, replacing things that don't need to be replaced.
Yeah. And any good IEP is going to help you prioritize what you should think about discarding over what can be cleaned. But they're never going to have the final say. Right. And I've dealt with people that they're not going to take any chances. We're just tossing everything. In fact, my sister-in-law was close to one of those.
Okay.
But
that's okay.
Right. And we were also confident that we got everything in their home from a source area standpoint. But I agree with you 100%.
It also depends on the type of exposure too. Humidity related exposures in buildings in certain environments. You may be forced to throw everything away.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it depends on where you're at. Would I throw away silverware? Probably not in any condition. There are definitely items that are cleanable, but down here we get snowbirds who leave their condos for months and months and months at a time with their air conditioning running but not dehumidifying, and you will walk into what appears to be an underground cave in some cases, and it's
literal nightmare.
Growing on glass, growing on metal, growing on anything in the building. So it in some cases can get to that extent, and then you're not going to even spend the time or waste the time to try to clean things. So
and absolutely, and I guess that's a point that I want to make, is that there's not a one size fits all. And so you guys are your clients are so blessed to have people like you. I'm telling you, there's people in this industry that shouldn't be, and I'm glad you guys are out there.
And I think it's the case for every industry too. It feels like that way.
It does. But one of the things that it blew me away last time I went to one of our conferences we always go to, some of the mold assessors, mold remediators, what we would consider IEPs, were almost looking down and making fun of the fact that a mold assessor would work with a doctor to try to figure out what's going on with the client. And I heard comments like, you should be telling the doctor what needs to be done and this and that. It's like, you don't get it. It's a team effort here to help this individual. So given what you do, Andy, your line of work now with the company you work for, how do we bridge that gap? How do we help IEPs see the importance of working with somebody's doctor just to make somebody feel better, to connect those dots for the doctor so that we can just help them get better?
I love that. And that's where my passion is. I'm not an inspector. I clearly didn't go back to medical school, but I love connecting people. And I think that it's really important for doctors to stay in their lane, but know just enough, and important for IEPs, indoor environmentalists, to stay in their lane, but know just enough. For example, it's really important for IEPs to understand the health effects of mycotoxins and mold, because as you guys are asking questions and taking client history, like when I was answering the phones and onboarding clients, I'd ask a ton of questions. I'd say, hey, any health concerns? No health concerns. But, my husband has early onset dementia and my kids have eczema. So I got to see trends. And so it's really important that you guys know just enough to, make assessments and know what questions to ask. But everybody needs to stay in their lane and know just enough to direct their clients to the right professionals. And it's wild. Some of these doctors that are so smart and intelligent, some of them have no idea how to direct their clients. So some of these doctors are like, well, you got mold in your body. And they're like, oh my gosh, what now? And they're like, well, do an ERMI. And they do. And then they're like, well, now what? And some were like, do another ERMI. Well, clean the house, and that's the other thing is like these people that are doing these dust tests. And I'm not crapping on dust testing. It's good, valuable data, hands down. But when we're focusing on the dust too much, then the remedy is doing these small particulate cleans, which is super expensive. And then we're missing the source, right? And that can get expensive. I've seen people spend, oh my gosh, insane amounts of money cleaning their house. They come in, do another dust test. There's not enough dust to test it, so it's looking good. And then they miss these hidden sources. So doctors really, and this is where my passion is just kind of explaining to doctors the diagnostic process of an environment and understanding that each and every test is going to have limitations. I never had a spore trap air sample identify an issue in my house. Never. I believe that spore trap air sampling has its place. Just like going into the doctor and he's not going to start with an MRI. He's going to start with that basic blood panel. Well, the basic blood panel didn't show anything. Does that mean all blood sampling is crap? No. It has its time and place. And so as you're evaluating, it's important for these doctors to understand a little bit, to understand that there's things that have a time and place and their limitations. And there's kind of a big disconnect there. So
yeah, as you're talking, I'm going to bring it up again. I recorded with Brad over the weekend, who was one of the assessors that for us at CMA that helped with some of these new construction issues here for a Fox 13 article. So I had him over. We were talking about that the other day, but I started our recording by going on a rant, and I wouldn't say I got very emotional, just kind of shared my feelings. But it reminds me of some of these influencers that you see online. We'll just use Instagram as an example. Adam, me and you talked about this last week while we were together. They'll push air purifiers. They'll push certain candles now. They'll push plants. They'll push everything in the world claiming it's going to help you with your mold problems. And it may short term because you're taking particulate and dust out of the air. But they sell these things or talk about these things in a way that make it seem like you're going to solve your mold problems. It's going to help your house. You're going to get rid of your mold issues without addressing the source. And the reason why it frustrates me, it probably, if you're listening, it may seem silly to hear me talk about getting frustrated about this. But I see so many people, so many of our clients that follow people that are doing this, and they believe it. And they waste months and years of their lives feeling poorly because they think they're doing enough to help their house's indoor air quality. So that's what it reminded me of, Andy, as you were talking about that some of these dust tests that are pushed, which again, they're fine data points. But if you don't know what to do with that data, you don't have somebody helping you understand that data and where to go next, it's useless.
Thank you for bringing this up because I went on a rant the other day. I want to make something super clear. I'm not in this industry because it's exciting. It's exhausting.
It's exciting to us.
Exhausting. Well, no, it is. Okay. It is. I mean, I'm telling you, like, you guys, please, you should show up at a party that I'm at. Some people are like, gotta get rid of those scented candles. Well, can't be, some people love it. Some people are like, oh, I'm going to step away from this girl. I'm here because this impacted my life, and now it's trending. And we have we have such extremes, right? We have people that are like, oh, mold, we have professionals like mold doesn't do that. And we're going to throw bleach on it and call it a day. And then you have professionals like, oh my gosh, well, yep, you've got mycotoxins in your house and you got to give us your firstborn child and a kidney and $100,000. And I believe that there's a pragmatic middle ground. And it's hard to navigate. So, and God bless these influencers, because I will tell you, social media, it's a blessing and a curse. And thank God for social media, because that's how I figured out mold was in my home. However, some of these influencers, I'm just like, you're talking about things that you have no right talking about. You're giving information to people and they're taking it because they're like, well, this person's been through it. They've been through it. They have all these followers, and they're typically selling, these dust tests, and that's okay. I mean, whatever. We all have to, I sell testing too. I'm not an influencer by any means, God help me. But it's misdirected. And so a lot of times this is what on the weekends, I read scientific articles. I love to read about air purification technology because that's a big one. There's a lot of technologies out there like, we'll solve all your problems. Forget about finding the mold. We're going to put this fancy dancy thing in your house. Well, what it's doing is playing chemistry with your indoor air quality. So it might be taking out one contaminant, but then creating all these other contaminants. And I'm sorry, those candles, no, thank you.
Yeah. Nothing says let's remove mold spores from the environment like taking a pot full of soil and a plant and putting it in the center of that room.
Yeah, in a mold infested environment.
Yeah, because that soil isn't full of biocontaminants, is it? Nah.
Listen, Adam, I'm going to be super honest. If you could see, I have plants everywhere.
Oh, so do I
love plants.
So do I.
But you're not okay.
You
so
I'm
going to argue this
on.
I'm going to argue this on two sides. So plants do help clean the air, and it happens at the root soil level, by the way. But you are right; it can also be a reservoir. So when I get very I shouldn't tell people this because they're going to judge me, but I didn't get rid of my plants when we remediated because I've been with my husband 11 years. I have the first plant he gave me for my first Mother's Day. Like I get attached to my plants, but I did repot everything. But you're not wrong. But the point we're trying to make to all the listeners here is you have to remove the source.
Yes.
Find the source of moisture, identify it, and that's not always easy. Mitigate it. And then, get the fungal ecology back to a healthy, place of homeostasis. There is no magic air purifier. I'm sorry. It's not even a Band-Aid.
Or fog, or spray, or chemical, or any of those things. Yes. What we need to do is kill the word kill. Okay. Yes. I think we need to remove the word kill from this industry, because I know anybody outside of this industry, they want, even people that are knowledgeable will say kill mold. They're killing my mold. They're here to kill mold. And that's where I want to stop and say, no, we're here to remove we're here to remove the source and the particulate from the environment. The goal is not to kill your mold. And so that might help.
That's going to be a good clip, by the way.
All right. Yeah.
Well, and the best way that I combat. So I'm a mycology enthusiast. So I was reading about fungi long before I was sick from mold, which is ironic. But what people need to understand is mycotoxins are a secondary metabolite. And what's meant by a secondary metabolite versus a primary metabolite is it's something that's rendered from the organism that's not life-sustaining. So here's my best analogy. Mycotoxins are the mold's defense mechanism. So it's like their switchblades or their knives or their guns, right? Just because there's mold doesn't mean there's mycotoxins. So if you put mold in a natural setting and it doesn't feel threatened, it's not going to release mycotoxins. Just like, say you go into a building and the building is full of people and their friends and their family and they're celebrating. Are you going to find a lot of weapons in that building? Probably not.
Maybe here in the South.
I
say a certain part of Tampa, maybe.
Not all of us in this. We're a gun-friendly family up here, but you get what I'm saying,
I know
right?
what you mean. Yeah, I'm messing with you.
But if you go into a building where people are feeling threatened, you're going to find weapons, and so that's so if you're going to try to kill mold, you're piss it off, and it's going to release those mycotoxins. And people need to really understand that. When we're talking about the health effects of mold, we're not talking about spores. Spores are not toxic. Spores are allergenic. I'm not allergic to mold. Mycotoxins are toxins, period. So very different beast, very small, very different than spores. And that, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, because the current remediation standards, they're looking at spores. They're not addressing mycotoxins. So, it's a wild beast. The industry is, it's a wild one, and there's just a lot of miscommunication, a lot of misinformation out there, and it's a wildfire.
Which is why and why it's so important to hire somebody like Adam, who knows how to properly remediate, because I think that's one of the reasons why people get so sick after bad remediations. The exact example that you just used, Andy. If we're just ripping open contaminated building materials and just spraying chemicals on top of them, they're going to release those toxins if they feel threatened like that. I mean, why wouldn't they? Like any other organism, it's going to try to fight back. And I truly believe that's probably is one of the main reasons why people get so sick after a bad botched remediation.
Yeah, not just that, the unwillingness of the remediator to go further, to ensure that they've done everything possible. That means going into common spaces. What we find here a lot, and we've talked about it many, many times on this podcast, is a lot of times the scope is dictated, by maybe what the insurance company is going to cover. Not me in particular as a remediator, but I'm saying other remediation companies, their job is predicated on what the insurance companies are going to pay for. And so in a lot of those cases, they do very limited work and will leave clearly moldy contaminated spaces alone, or won't even think about going to a common wall that's adjacent to a wall that's been identified that has growth, because nobody's paying for it, and they don't even think to even tell the client, hey, there could be another issue over here. So it's a big problem too.
Such an obstacle. And that's why I when I came across you guys, I was like, this is so awesome, because not only are you guys out there doing this, but you're also, and I know you're doing this after hours, taking time away from your family to educate. That's just, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate that. That's so important. So I know you guys are tired and you're busy, but
it's okay. We had somebody on YouTube write us, what do you guys just talk about mold all the time? Do you really think people are listening? And I mean, we do talk about it literally all the time.
We do.
So
at the mold show, I know we should have a party, because it's my boss got a call one time, and he's like, so I met the caller was like this, I met this girl at a party, and she was lecturing on indoor air quality, and I need a mold inspection. And sure enough, I was at a party that weekend, and I was like, I was like, all right, I got a dip. You guys got scented candles in here. I got to get out of here. But it'd be fun to join a party with you guys, because
definitely,
for
sure.
You
said tequila earlier, and my ears. Yeah. You can't see my ears, but my ears are like, what? Tequila. Go.
Well, we'll have to have you back sometime, Andy. Really appreciate having you on. Really enjoyed our conversation today.
I really enjoyed it too. Thank you again for the work that you're doing, the families that you're serving, and the good information you're putting out there. We need so many more of you guys. So please keep doing it.
And thank you for sharing your story. It's not easy to talk about, the struggle you went through, and it's extremely real. But I think you doing that, I mean, I know there are other people out there in the same boat as you, feeling the same way.
It's not uncommon. No. Not at all. Yeah. So, and that's why I continue to share it, because there's people out there that are struggling, that have no idea that their environment is contributing to it. So if you're suffering from mysterious health issues, please look at your environment. It could change your life.
Well said. Thank you, Andy.
All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
The content in this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. While our goal is to educate, the hosts are not medical professionals, and the opinions expressed are their own. For any health concerns or questions about mold exposure and its effects, please seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider.